After paddling the Sun Dolphin Aruba 110, I quickly discovered 4 reasons why you should never fish from a cheap recreational kayak. Reason number 1, stability issues. I paddled this kayak for about 45 minutes on a calm day with my wife and mother-in-law, and I never felt unsafe, but I also didn't try to tip it because while getting into it, I sensed that it just wouldn't take that much to flip. And I'm a big proponent of standing to fish because it allows you to see better, but that would never be possible with this sit inside kayak unless you just have miraculously good balance or installed outriggers on it. The second reason why I wouldn't fish from this kayak is because of the lack of rigging options. Since it's a recreational kayak, it doesn't have any fishing features, which that's no knock on it, that's just how it is. But because of this, it makes it more difficult to fish from, and I'm unable to really make it my own. You see, recreational kayaks are great for paddling around your lake or floating down the river, but they require just so much more work and effort to rig for fishing. So you're often just better off upgrading to a fishing kayak if you plan to fish from it regularly. The third reason why you should never fish from a cheap kayak is because they're just uncomfortable. While wrestling in middle school, I was illegally tombstone pile drive during a match. And while I ended up coming back and winning the match, it actually injured my back. And to this day, I get back spasms. That's the biggest reason why I need a comfortable kayak seat. My back hurt within about 15 minutes of sitting in this kayak. However, my wife, on the other hand, said it didn't hurt her and she was fairly comfortable in hers. So it could just be me being a wimp. All I know is that the seat is not as comfortable as some of my other kayak seats, and I would definitely need a kayak cushion for an extended trip in the Aruba 10. And the final reason why you should never fish from a cheap kayak, and that's because they're thermo-molded. Now, I know my in-laws have had these kayaks for several years. However, thermo-molded kayaks, which just means it was 2 pieces of a mold melted together, don't last nearly as long as roto-molded kayaks. They just come apart at the seam. However, there are cheap fishing kayaks that are manufactured this same exact way because it's just simply easier and less expensive. But if I'm going to spend the money on something, I tend to want it to last. And that's why I always go with a roto-molded kayak. Now, despite these drawbacks, my experience with this sit-in kayak wasn't all bad. There were aspects of the Sun Dolphin Aruba 10 that I actually enjoyed. Number 1, it was super easy to paddle. I truly loved that about it. I felt like I could fly compared to paddling my larger, heavier fishing kayaks that just feel like a barge when I'm paddling them. So if I was ever in a kayak race, I would certainly use this kayak because I nearly felt weightless with every stroke of the paddle. The Sun Dolphin Aruba 10 effortlessly glides across the water. Another aspect that I really enjoyed about this kayak is how easy it was to control. You see, the ease of paddling translates well into controlling the kayak. I could stop and change directions quickly, which is extremely valuable on the river or even in the lake to avoid something. But what I was most impressed with as far as being able to control the kayak was how straight it tracked. I paddled cheap kayaks in the past, and it just felt like I was zigzagging all the way to my destination, no matter how strong I paddled on either side. And that's just not the case with this kayak. I paddled in a fairly straight line without having to think about it very much at all. And the last thing that I think gets a lot of people most excited is the price. You see, when I got home, I looked up the price of this kayak, and I knew it was cheap, but I was surprised to see that it was on sale for less than $200 at the time. This kayak is regularly $200 to $500 depending on where you buy it, which is still pretty cheap considering a decent quality fishing kayak will cost you at least $1,200. So if you're on a tight budget and occasionally fish, the Sun Dolphin Aruba 10 is definitely worth checking out. However, for the paddler on a tight budget who enjoys fishing more often than not, I recommend checking out this video where I was surprised by how much I enjoyed a cheap fishing kayak. Can't wait to see you there.